There is a form of cruelty that leaves no visible marks. It doesn't scream, doesn't hit, doesn't insult directly. It simply disappears. And that deliberate disappearance is capable of dismantling any human being from the inside in a way that no aggressive word ever could. We're talking about silence as a weapon. And today you're going to understand why this isn't just a relationship discussion. It's a matter of psychological survival. Before anything else, we need to separate healthy silence from silence as a weapon. There is a silence that heals, the kind you use to step back, process emotions, avoid an argument that would escalate. That's emotional self-regulation. That's intelligence. Silence as a weapon is completely different. It's intentional. It's calculated. Its specific goal is to make the other person feel like they don't exist, like they have no value, like they're being punished without a trial, without a jury, without the right to defend themselves. The fundamental difference is this. Healthy silence says, I need time to process. Silence as a weapon says, you don't even deserve my reaction. And that second message, even if it's never spoken out loud, is received by the human brain with devastating clarity. Neuroscience has an answer for this, and it's deeply unsettling. A study from the University of Michigan showed that social exclusion activates the same brain regions that process physical pain. This isn't a metaphor. This isn't being overly sensitive. This is neurology. When someone deliberately ignores us, the brain interprets it as a threat to survival. And it makes evolutionary sense. For thousands of years, being excluded from the social group meant death. Without a tribe, you didn't survive the winter, the predator, the disease. So when someone uses silence as punishment, your nervous system goes into alarm mode. Cortisol surges, adrenaline spikes. Your mind starts desperately searching for what you did wrong. Because if you find the mistake, maybe you can fix it. Maybe you can be accepted again. And this is exactly where control begins. Whoever uses silence as a weapon knows consciously or unconsciously that they are creating an emotional vacuum, and vacuums need to be filled. What happens in that vacuum? The target starts to project, starts imagining scenarios, starts blaming themselves for things that may never have happened, starts trying to figure out what broke the relationship, what caused the other person to pull away. Meanwhile, the one who's gone silent has total control over the narrative. They're watching the other person fall apart without having to say a single word. And with every attempt at reconnection the target makes, the silence gains even more power, because now it's clear. I can make you chase me without offering anything in return. That's the trick. The cruelty isn't in the silence itself, but in what it silently communicates. That the other person has zero value. That their existence is irrelevant enough that it doesn't even warrant a conflict. Not everyone who uses silence as a weapon is conscious of it. Some learned this strategy in childhood, in homes where affection was withdrawn as punishment. If your parents ignored you when you made mistakes, if love was conditional on behavior, you probably internalized the idea that silence is a legitimate tool of control. But there's a group that uses it consciously, personalities with narcissistic and manipulative traits. For these people, silence isn't just a punishment, it's a display of power. It's the equivalent of saying, I can remove you from my reality with a single gesture, and there's nothing you can do about it. Psychologist Susan Forward, in her work on emotional blackmail, describes this as part of a larger pattern of control. The silence comes after a behavior of yours that contradicted the other person's will. It's a direct punishment, and the implicit message is clear. If you don't want to be ignored again, learn not to cross me. It's conditioning, pure and simple. Research on social exclusion is unanimous. Prolonged silence causes real, measurable damage to mental health. The first phase is the search. The person tries to understand what happened, looks for clues, analyzes the last interactions. Their brain is in overdrive trying to solve the puzzle. The second phase is doubt. They start questioning their own perception of reality. Did I overreact? Am I being too sensitive? This phenomenon even has a name, passive gaslighting. The silence makes you question your own sanity without the other person having to say a single word. The third phase is submission. Exhausted from trying to solve the mystery, the person starts giving in, starts making themselves smaller, starts accepting conditions they would never accept under normal circumstances, just to restore contact. And when the silence finally ends, the connection has been re-established on the manipulator's terms. The power dynamic has been consolidated, and the next cycle has already been prepared. First, recognize the pattern. There is an enormous difference between someone who needs space to process and someone who uses silence as systematic punishment. The first one communicates, I need some time, let's talk later. The second simply disappears, and only resurfaces when they decide you've suffered enough. Second, resist the urge to chase. I know this feels almost impossible because your nervous system is in survival mode. But every time you run after them, you confirm that the strategy works. You feed the pattern. Third, examine your own history. If you find yourself in relationships where silence is a recurring weapon, there's a strong chance that this pattern resonates with something from your childhood. Working through this with a professional isn't weakness. It's the most efficient path to breaking the cycle. And finally, set a clear boundary for yourself. Punitive silence is not an acceptable form of communication. Not in a healthy relationship. Not in a genuine friendship. Not in a functional workplace. Here's what the manipulator never tells you. Using silence as a weapon has a cost for the user too, because maintaining control requires constant vigilance. It requires you to live based on someone else's reaction. It requires your satisfaction to depend on another person's suffering. And that isn't power. That's dependency dressed up as power. Someone who needs silence to feel in control is in fact demonstrating that they can't handle conflict, vulnerability, or the possibility that the other person might have a valid point. Silence as a weapon is, at its core, a confession of weakness. And the best response to it? Not to chase, not to beg. It's to develop such a solid presence within yourself that the other person's silence loses the power it never should have had. If this resonated with you, drop a comment below and let me know which part hit home. And share this with someone who needs to hear it today.